What does Singapore sound like? Hi, my name is Edward, and in this video essay I'm looking at a very specific question. How is hip-hop for mass consumption in Singapore shaping and reflecting social political identity? In other words, when Singaporean rappers spit bar about Lying City, Tanglish and Ang Mo Pai, and even the president, what are they really saying about race, class, nation, and what it means to be Singaporean? I'll argue that Singapore's hip-hop scene is more than just a copy of American rap. It's a global genre imported from the West but remixed to fit local youth identity, a cautious but powerful space for social political commentary, especially for minority races, and third, a hybrid soundscape that mixes language, cultures, and sound to reflect Singapore's multicultural reality. Let's start with how this global thing called hip-hop even became ours. Hip-hop began in the 1970s New York as a language of downtrodden black youth. Decades later, teenage Jerome and Sekong discovering the same sounds on YouTube and Spotify. Singapore's pop culture diet has been heavily Western for years. English pop, American TV, global streaming playlists. So when local musicians started making music, they naturally reached for Western genres. Hip-hop is just one of the clearest examples of that. But local rap isn't just mimicry. The beats may be local, but the stories are very much about Singapore. The Lying City Boys track could sit on a low US rap playlist all day. Trap drums, R&B hooks, Polish production. But listen to what he's actually talking about. Specific Singapore hangout spots, local food, public figures, and later on even President Halima. He said that hip-hop represents Singapore best because we're already globalized. Our media, slangs, and styles are soaked in overseas influence. So his music leans into that instead of pretending we're culturally sealed off.
Mustafa, you are looking at a star. All my moves be out of reach. See me shining from a...
Then there's Young Raja, the self-branded Tanglish rapper. He grows up on American hip-hop. He cites Lil Wayne as an influence and he signs with Def Jam SCA in a US label. And then puts out songs named after Mustafa Center rapping rapid mix of Tamale and English. His sound is instantly recognizable as global hip-hop, but the references are deeply local. Little Indian landmarks, Tamale slang, first-gen Singapore Tamale identity. He proves that you can play in a general global hip-hop market without pretending you're from Atlanta or LA. Some critics complain that local rappers sounds too American, but if you listen closely, you hear something very Singaporean. Sentence sliding between American-ish slang, Singapore Singlish, and Singlish, and a bit of dialect. That code switching isn't fake. It's how many people here actually talk. The form comes from the West, but the accent, the rhythm, and everyday details are shaped by Singapore. So at the first level, Singaporean hip-hop led youth global in sound but local in content at the same time. Globally, hip-hop has a reputation for protest. Think Public Enemy, NWA, Kendrick Lamar. But in Singapore, the context is very different. Strict law on racial harmony and religion, real defamation risk, and the strong official narrative of racial harmony. You can't just drop a "fuck the police" style track and expect zero consequences. So local artists get creative. They use humor, metaphor, and careful framing to make their points. A lot of prominent rappers here comes from minority backgrounds, Indian, Malay, mixed. Early study even noted hip-hop resonating strongly with Indian youth who sees echoes of African-American marginalization with themselves. Groups like Medical Haircut Crew leans into that.
And the smell of a perfume that she sprays when in the mood, so I brace myself to fight.
There's three Indian Singaporean guys who counts around their lyrics but also pokes at the serious issues. On the surface, their songs are full of jokes and censorship, way young behavior and phonies, but underneath they're asking who gets heard, who gets silenced, and how much Singapore is just performance.
Fucked in 30, don't worry, we be on time.
The Lying City Boys does something similar a quieter way. In 1030, he turns the law about not drinking in public after 10:30 into song title and a mood. And Halima, he celebrates President Halima Jacob's rise as a Malay Singapore woman, but also slips in detail about that how she became president through uncontested election. He described his style as, "I'll show you what's behind the door, but I won't kick the door down." That one line explains about Singapore rap. It reveals hints and not just more than it screams. And the most confrontational ad is Sabna's Nur. In 2019, he released a satirical rap with his sister responding to a brownface ad. The video directly calls out racism and Chinese privileges. The state banned it, investigated him, and he eventually was jailed for promoting enmity between racial groups. Subhas later said that all he did was said the quiet part out loud, things many minorities feel but rarely voices. His case shows both potential of hip-hop as a tool for critique and the hard limits of expression in Singapore. So at the second layer, hip-hop here works as a kind of X-ray of society. It doesn't always shout slang, but it exposes pressure points, race, classes, censorship, through joke stories and specific references. The third layer is this hybridity in language, sound, and in visuals. Singapore hip-hops are often proudly multilingual. English mixed with Tamale, English plus Malay slangs, English with Hokkien and Singlish. That's how conversation already sounds in buses, in schools, and in hawker centers here. The song simply turns that everyday linguistic reality into art. Young Rajat's bilingual scroll, switching between Tamale and English mid-sentence, became his signature. Tamale-speaking listener feels seen, and long-Tamale English-speaking listener still connects with the energy, rhythm, attitude. He turns what he thought might be too niche into his actual brand. The dance song, the track itself, is already a modern trap banger, but music video drops in Malay zapping, Chinese fan dances, and Indian classical dance, and visually plugs three major ethical traditions to one hip-hop frame. The point isn't subtle. It's what multicultural Singapore looks and feels like when you're channeling it through a global genre. This kind of hybridity does a lot of work. It first reflects reality, second expands who feels included, and third adds something back to global hip-hop. It also quietly says, English isn't the only language that belongs to the cool music. So what does hip-hop tell us about social political identity in Singapore? It shows how global we are. A genre born in Bronx now feels perfectly at home in Bishan and Bidok. It reveals how constrained we are. Artists measure their words carefully when they brush up against race and politics. And third, it celebrates how hybrid we are. Multiple cultures and languages sharing the same songs without apology. Singaporean hip-hop lets young people to be Western and Asian at the same time, proud and frustrated, playful and political all at once. So the next time you hear a local rapper shouts Mustafa, Halima, and Mo Pai over a trap beat, remember, it's not just background noise on your playlist. It's a running commentary on who we are, how we are seen, and who gets to speak in the city. Thank you.